Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Elementary. So in this episode, we had this guy named OG, I think, Poner. I can't remember. Basically, he got killed on a live stream or whatever, and that's basically what the case is about. Because at first it's like, well, he's killed on a live stream. We actually don't have no idea where he actually is, so we don't know where the crime scene is. I mean, actually he was hit, but they didn't really know whether it was like, oh, whether he just assaulted, was he actually killed? Turns out later on that he wasn't killed. He was killed. An interesting thing about that, I'll kind of go back to the case in a little bit, kind of just a thing that popped up, is that one of the witnesses in this episode turns out to be Gregson's niece, which has his family ever come up before? I don't remember him like it coming up. Maybe it was brought up in the past, but I don't remember anything about him having a brother or sister, but let alone like extra family like that. But it's like, he brought up the fact he's a niece. I was like, really? And it just turns out she happens to be one of the like this specific girl because she had one of her friends over that was specifically talking about. And I really appreciate the fact that she was super knowledgeable. She's like, giving the rundown to Gregson about how this whole situation works. The way she's going on about it's like, oh yeah, there's some big deals. I was like, oh, he was like this until he got this, and it's just like running through. Oh, later on, you end up finding out the dude's name is Owen, but it's like, man, she's really knows a lot about him. I mean, that's kind of probably part of the day and age of the internet. Like the fact is that because with a situation like that, people kind of open themselves up. They let you kind of know stuff, and probably combination of that plus doing your own research and stuff like that. But nevertheless, I thought it was kind of interesting. Also, kind of, it got, I was sitting here before I started recording, I started thinking about the fact is, it's like, oh, well, what's still happening about him and his whole possibly proposing situation? The actress, if I remember correctly, her name's Virginia Madsen. I recently can't remember what it was. She's been in something. There was like, I know American Gothic. It seemed like it was the first thing I ever saw her in, but apparently there was something else before that I'd seen her in because I went back and saw something. I was like, oh crap, she was in this. Why didn't I never? Witches of East End. She played like the guy that like she was a main character, and like not I can't remember if she was a main character, but she popped up. That was what it was. I was sitting here and completely forgot about that. But the thing is, I was bringing up the fact is, I'm curious about that whole situation. But granted, at the time, she's currently also doing Designated Survivor. I think that's what it is. She's also in that, so probably another reason. I mean, or they maybe just haven't brought that storyline back up again. Nevertheless, I'm getting way off topic here. Obviously, they look through it that basically this whole thing's connected to a gaming situation. That basically there's a group of people. They're kind of managers of esports teams. One of said people is the actor who plays Ando on the NBC show Heroes. I was looking, once again, another acting thing. I was trying to remember for the life of me what I saw him in recently that kind of got me thinking about him, but I couldn't for the life of me remember. And then it clicked. It was Sleepy Hollow. I think he played Diana's boss or something like that. And I was like, oh, I had been sitting on that for weeks trying to remember what it was that I remember seeing him in. It turns out it's not just all clean cut, because it actually turns out this is all connected also to a prostitution ring too, more specifically human trafficking, that basically he buys prostitutes to kind of like ease the boys and kind of get their attention, like, oh, like the boys get happy, then, if they decide they want a little bit more, it's not a problem in a sense. Except one of the people, because there's basically a whole deal between Ando's character, I'm just going to refer to him as that, and Owen, was the fact that they were trying to get this particular up and rising star. His name's Tindu. He's Inuit, I think, is what they were talking about. Which just, it connects with so many different things. Basically because his people live off of seals, like, as clothing, as food. They're basically, there was a kind of activist who had a problem with, played by Kathy Najimy. I know I'm probably butchering her name. Who I had to look it up because I wasn't 100% sure. Because when I saw her, because it's like she does a very good job as changing her voice. Because I saw the name, I was like, isn't that Peggy from King of the Hill? But I had to look it up, and it's like, yeah, it is. So I was like, oh, she does a little. Also, because I'd never put a name to her face before. I've seen her before. I just never knew her name. Probably the best thing I know her from is Hocus Pocus. But it's just like I never knew her name, and it's like, holy crap. But she's in this, her character's name was Raina. Basically she had a problem, with the whole killing seals things, but then obviously her and Tindu came to a deal about the whole situation. It's like, okay, we, like, there's a different type of killing seals. It's like his people would do it for survival, obviously, but people who just do it for fun and games and work together, with his support, with him being kind of famous, with his backing, she could get a lot more support and like, dealing with that because a lot more seals are killed in other fashions rather than just the way him and his people live. So, but getting back to it, obviously it's all about like, he's getting money to try and pay for his girlfriend's freedom because she's connected to a prostitution, human trafficking ring. Long story short, because I'm just like bouncing all over. This is like one of those episodes I just love how they point out the whole acting thing. That's like a lot of this is going to be about. There's one more thing I got to bring up, but it turns out the whole thing is about trading essentially because of global warming. Some of the nearing, I think it was around Canada or whatever. There's some pathways that are opening up now because a lot of the Arctic ice is melting and stuff like that. And so there are new pathways opening, which means ships, when they go that route, can find shorter routes to take and use up less fuel. Means they're saving a lot of money. But there are indigenous people in that land, in those lands, that basically they have to be bought up because they're not going to be willing to just give up their land because they own it and everything. And Tendu himself was basically, with brand deals and stuff like that. He took like 100,000 to buy his girlfriend's freedom. A lot of that other money, he spent like 20,000, like sending out multiple payments of 20,000 to basically get the people in those lands to not sell their land for anything, and then basically blocking, because it's basically one particular law firm that's trying to has a big part in those deals, and that law firm is the law firm that Raina, Kathy Najimy's character, her lawyer is part of. Who, final acting thing. Sorry, I know it's like so disturbing and disgusting. I'm doing this, but I had to look it up because I kept looking at the actress who played her lawyer. I was like, why do you look so familiar? Turns out her name is Christine Taylor. She is. Side note, ended up finding out that she's Ben Stiller's wife. So that's pretty cool. But also, is like where I know her from. Obviously, she's been in other things I've seen, but in more particular is the Dodgeball movie with Ben Stiller in it. She's the lady. She's like the one female character on Vince Vaughn's team. She's actually the one that he gets together with also her girlfriend. Just that whole situation at the end. But that was like, dude, I was like, that's what, yeah. I know, I'm sucky at that. I'm sorry. But it's just like, once I have those things in my head, I just have to talk about it just because I just think it's interesting. But she was the main one behind this because she hired a dude to basically, was trying to get to Tendu, but couldn't get to Tendu, so killed OG because he was one of the only people that knew Tendu's location, because the whole thing between him and the actor who played Ando, I didn't catch his character's name in this, but basically it was going back and forth for trying to steal him from the other dude. And so OG was the only person who knew. So, but basically the guy couldn't get to Tendu because Tendu and his girlfriend left before he could get to them. So basically he framed them for murders. It's kind of what the whole point of that was. So I know, just kind of had to put that all out there. That's like, I don't know, I've never seen that happen too much in an episode where it's just like acting thing upon acting thing upon acting thing that I just kind of had to talk about. But nevertheless, but that was only one half of the episode. The other half of the episode dealt with Shinwell and his whole situation. Basically, he got in contact with his daughter. Joan obviously points out her concerns are like, that's not really a good idea. I mean, it's like you're connected to this whole SBK thing. The fact of the matter is they see you with your daughter, things go sideways. It could easily end up in a situation where it's like, obviously your daughter gets dragged into it, or it could just be a matter of fact is that you are connected to that world, and it could without even them realizing you have a daughter and that you're connected to her, she could still get dragged into it because maybe she follows you at one point in time and get mixed up with obviously things later on in the episode kind of bring up the fact that won't happen. I'm going to get to that soon enough. Basically, she's like, oh, we can meet up and everything. And at first he's a little nervous. He's, reluctant and everything. But, he takes this opportunity because he's like, if I don't take this chance now, who's to say it won't work? I might not get a chance like this. And so Siobhan is like, oh, let's meet up. And they meet up. And she's like, basically, I need your help. There's this dude named Lucian. Basically, it's a situation where Shinwell's like, if it was him, he would have just beaten the dude down and probably would have killed him just because it's like, yo, you don't mess with my baby girl type of situation. It's like, to make a mark. Like, in particular, this would probably be him 10 years ago. As he is now, he's trying to do things differently, especially with this whole circumstance of trying to be a better person so he could be a better father to her. Plus, it would jeopardize his whole SBK situation because it would also mean like, whatever gang Lucian is connected to would have beef with him, and that turn into a whole thing. May even get Siobhan mixed up in it. So, Joan kind of talks him into finding an alternative route, and he basically makes him a promise. Like Lucian, he's like, okay, certain corners you're connected with, SBK kind of owns. So I'll tell some of our boys to back away. That way you can get those corners, and then it basically increases your revenue. Trying to talk from a business perspective, also pretending he's got a gun in his coat, just kind of threaten him a little bit. So works. But then later on, we find out like it's kind of like a heartbreaking moment. It's like, Shinwa's like, "Oh yeah, I talked to him." It's like, yeah, kind of, sometimes that's all it takes. And you almost see a disappointed look on her face. It's like, did she want him to beat the crap out? And it's like, "Oh yeah, I like walking you home, so maybe we can." And she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna put it down for you. This ain't happening. Like, I know what you do, and that's not going to change what's happening between us." The fact is, she's like, "I called you up because I want you to deal with that Lucian situation. That's it." And Shinwo tries to act like it doesn't bother him. He's like, "No, at the end of the day, it's like, you got to do what you got to do." So it's like, you using me. I was an asset. You knew you could use me to get. It's sad because it's like, you played up the daughter sympathy card, so that's kind of crappy. But at the same time, it's like understandable because it's like you're not trying to like get a close bond with your dad. It's like he wasn't there most of your life. It's like, I don't need you now. But it's like sad because he's trying. I mean, he can't really be open about what he's doing, because that's what I was afraid of, is the fact that she find out, oh, he's still part of that world and everything, but not realize, oh, he's doing this whole undercover thing, but he can't tell her about it. So she just look at it and be like, oh, you're just part of this gang world again, which might be something that comes up later on. But for now, it's just. I don't know. It's just sad because it's sad that she would use him like that, because it's like you thought that, oh, they were making headway, but it turns out not to be the case. It makes you wonder what's her and what's just her aunt, because obviously she's probably like, it's a dad's not been around long enough, so obviously there's going to be issues. But it makes you, like I said, just. How much of it's just her aunt bagging on her dad, or is it just, how much of like her own opinion that she's formed, because it's like, yo, I'm older now, I realize things, you weren't there for me, you're part of that world, and it's like, you can't be a part of my life when you're a part of that world. I get you trying and everything, but it's like, we're just not going to mix in jail because you aren't. I mean, he's going down the right path at the very least. It might take some time, maybe eventually he can sway over. I don't know, we just have to really see how that plays out going forward into the future. Side note too, I wanted to include this. I almost let it slip my mind. Sherlock still has a shaved head. Obviously, it's growing back. So, but I was like, Kai brought that up last time. I was like, is he going to have it in the next episode? He does. Well, they'll be in the next episode. I don't know. So we'll definitely have to see on that. So. Also, final side note, it's like, it's always weird when you realize how Sherlock gets the information he does. Because even like the lady that was connected, because like basically the prostitution ring, like the place they were working out of, like caught on fire. Obviously, it wasn't an accidental fire. But then it was like, Sherlock got on his like down to the ground and start licking what was, I think he called it oil or something. And even the lady was like who was part of like the arson investigation, was like, okay, what the hell is he doing? Is your partner okay? It's like you forget, not forget, like it always comes up because he's always tasting weird crap just to kind of be like, oh yeah, this is oil from a blank and blank 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 car. It's like, I'm not a car person, didn't care, it's just went all over my head. But it's like, you got all that from just licking some oil off the ground. And it's like, before you even did that, you didn't even really, I mean, he probably sniffed it a little bit and it was like, oh, it's oil. And it's like, let me get a taste. And it's, oh yeah, that's definitely this model of car. It's like, I forget just how weird he is and how weird he's able to pull knowledge out of his head by just doing something weird like that. So just kind of had to point that out too. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.